All right, thank you, Madam Chair. You should have two documents from us, and when you open them, they will look familiar. They are labeled SF21-044, and we'll look at that one first. These are updates of documents you received from us probably 2 weeks ago in committee. They represent which learning environment the school districts are in by grade level at a snapshot in time. So on the document that you're looking at, first they're in county order. So if you're looking for specific school districts, you can go down that third column that says county and find the counties that your district covers, and you'll find the school districts then in that county. Next column over is the FTE. Then the first set of three columns is either elementary, middle school, or high school. And you see in yellow at the top, start of the second term. We arbitrarily determined the start of the second term to be November 2nd. So on November 2nd, first one listed, Marmonton Valley, was on site at the elementary level, the middle school, and the high school. Then the second set of three columns, it represents the end of December. So before they left for winter break, what learning environment was that district in? And again, for Marmonton Valley, you'll see on site all the way across. We color coded to make it a little easier to pick out those that were in remote. They're in green or hybrid, and they're in blue. So that's the first document. The second document, SF21-045, is actually the same printout, but we removed everybody that was solely on site. So you only see the districts that at one of those two times had at least one building in remote or hybrid. Now there's an exception, as always, going through it this morning. After you turn it in, you find the mistake. Pleasanton School District is on this list, and they should not be. They were hybrid the entire time. So when you come to, they were on site the entire time. So when you come to Pleasanton, they don't belong on this list, but everybody else should have had at least one school in either remote or hybrid. It was thought that it'd be a little easier for you to look at the list that way, rather than have to scroll through all 286 to find those districts that were remote or hybrid. This ends at the end of December. That is the most recent data we have. So I can't tell you when they started back in January at this point, what format they were in. That data, we're collecting this every quarter, so we will have that data available sometime in late March or early April.
Just a quick question, Craig, and then we'll have to hold all other questions until discussion time. But thank you very much, and thank you for exchanging emails with me today as I tried to organize and find and locate. But why do we need to wait until March to find out if schools are remote or hybrid?
That was just our plan for collecting the data throughout the year, is to collect it each quarter. If the committee wants it before then, we can send out a special request to districts and collect it again.
That would be great. I think that would be very helpful if they could respond to a survey and just let us know if they're elementary and secondary, if they're remote or hybrid, and what their plans are. So for example, I know some school districts have set dates that they will return in April, some, let's see, it's next week. But that would be very helpful, and the sooner that you're able to collect that, the better. So thank you very much for providing this. This is just going to be the platform in which we hear testimony today, and I appreciate you or Brad or Dr. Randy Watson hanging around and listening to the testimony that we have today. And hopefully there will be time for our virtual roundtable discussion after our testimony. All right.
Can I ask one question for clarification?
Yes, sure.
Do you want to know what format they're in now or when they came back from the winter break?
So I think it would be helpful, I know it's more data, but to show how they started in January. Well, let's go 2 weeks after the start. Maybe just put a set date on there, because I know that some school districts wanted to ease into it, and we don't want to collect the one-time remote
Correct.
schools.
Okay.
So, for example, I know that that happened when we did the last day in December, whereas Augusta's been in person the entire time except the last like 3 days before the Christmas break. And so it looks like they're, remote, but they're not. So let's find a date that seems to make sense based on start dates for the general population of schools. And let's say that start date, that date seems to be like fair date is January 20th. That, then yes, okay. All
Okay.
right,
Thank you.
well, yes, thank you, we appreciate that, and we'll be in touch. All right, so committee, our first guest, and I do need to, before Dr. Christine White shares with us today, she is actually sharing longer than most of our conferees today. Talked to her initially, so she'll be sharing it more at length, but she does have a set amount of time. You do have the emails for every single individual, so if we do not have time to ask questions, or you please write that down, you can send that to me or to them directly. Also, regarding this is informal testimony. So these individuals didn't necessarily send testimony. Some sent articles they wrote, some sent studies that they had found, and apologies on that. That was sent out today by Roger. If that, and it is my fault on that, it's kind of all combined together. And so it doesn't necessarily have a name on it. So I want you to kind of peruse that later. Don't try to look for it while they're talking. It may be cumbersome because I think there's 97 pages or so in that. It's rather long. The written testimony, there are just shy of 70 written testimony. Their names should be on that. You should be able to find it. And also those are submitted together because if you do one for each one, it is very laborious for you to have to click and open. We're still trying to figure out the best system. So when we have a hearing on Monday, I think we probably will go back to individual PDFs for each testimony. Okay, with that, Dr. White is online with us, and Dr. Christine White, you have the floor. Welcome.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you guys. My name's Christine White. I'm a pediatrician in Overland Park. I've been a pediatrician for 21 years. I have two girls that are high schoolers at Blue Valley Northwest. And the views that I'm presenting today are my own views and no one else's. I am here speaking in favor of kids being in school in person 5 days a week, if that is what they and their parents desire for them. Since August, I've spoken and advocated widely for kids to be in person. I've spoken at the Blue Valley Board of Education meeting 7 times since August. I've spoken at the Kansas Board of Education 1 time. I've spoken at the Johnson County Board of County Commissioners twice, and then at the Kansas Legislature's Special Committee on Economic Recovery 1 time. Repeatedly, I've provided data from our country and internationally to these different committees and boards, trying to show the data about how we can safely get kids in school and how it's been done in other places with similar transmission rates to our own. I'm not going to go into those details because later today, Dr. Jill Ackerman, a family practice doctor from Kansas City, is going to go into the data extensively. I've also provided study data from our own county and our country about the harms that virtual and hybrid learning have already been noted to be causing. And I've testified about the short and long-term damage that is being done to our kids that I'm seeing personally in my own exam rooms on a daily basis since we began this sort of grand experiment in March. Multiple national organizations and well-respected individuals, physicians, have also said that children should be in school in person if it can be done safely. And I think that in the schools in this part of the country, in this part of the world, that we have the ability to do that. Initially, I started speaking because I felt like if maybe the school board members were able to hear and understand the scientific studies and the data about how we could safely get kids in school, and that maybe they would say, oh, okay, I understand this. This does make sense. I also presented the data about what was already being seen with increased negative effects from mental health problems primarily in our county and our state and our country. So I was hoping that if they had this data from a hopefully trusted resource like a physician, that they would choose to try to get kids in school. I now believe, though, that the boards are very paralyzed really by fear. I understand it's a huge undertaking to have to be the person or the board that makes the decision to send kids back to school in the time of a pandemic, which none of us have ever dealt with. I think initially there was a fear of going against the gating criteria that was created in Johnson County by our health department, which we've been speaking about the gating criteria really since July when it came out, that it's somewhat skewed, maybe not really applicable anymore, outdated for sure at this point. So initially the fear was we can't go against the gating criteria. There's also the fear, I think, of if a student or a teacher contract COVID in a school situation, you don't want to be the board that let that happen. Although study after study, as Dr. Ackman will explain, show that by far, if a student or a teacher comes down with COVID, they got it from their activities in the community, like a party or a family gathering where they were not wearing their PPE. When you go to school and everybody wears their mask and we wash our hands and we stay 3 to 6 feet apart, we really do not see transmission on any more than just a negligible level. It's very, very low. Also, there's the fear of maybe a student passing it to a teacher. There's many studies that are now showing that hardly ever happens. If a teacher's going to come down with it, they got it in their private life 99% of the time. And then the fear of a student or teacher dying of COVID. Again, if they got COVID, they probably got it somewhere other than the school. And if you're under the age of 18, your survivability of COVID is 99.997%. And if you're under the age of 70, which all the staff and teachers would be in most of our schools, the survivability rate is 99.5%. And there's actually was a law put in place by the Kansas Legislature to protect businesses, schools, other entities against a bad outcome that would have come from COVID that you could not control. So the schools are protected in that department. I think another big fear that we're working against is the fear of teachers' unions and the NEA. I think that they have a lot of control over school boards and superintendents, and then by extension over our children's right to an education. So there's a lot of stuff these boards are going against, and it's a hard decision, and I understand that. But I think really where we should be placing our fears or our concerns is really on what we are doing negatively to this entire generation of children. Really from the start of the lockdowns, I'd say in April or May of 2020, I started seeing just an exponential increase in the number of kids that were coming into my office for mental health issues like anxiety, depression, self-harming behaviors like cutting with knives or scissors. They were hopeless, they were lonely, they were isolated, and there were many that had suicidal thoughts. And prior to COVID, I would see maybe 2 to 3 kids a week with mild anxiety or depression. I would treat a lot of them, but it was mild. I seriously see 2 to 3 kids a day now with mental health issues, and they are not typically mild. I mean, it is scary, and it is dangerous, and it is often life-threatening, and it is hard for these kids and these parents, and it's heartbreaking, and it's because of what we are doing by not letting them go to school. So also ERs have seen, there's studies that have shown a 30% increase has been seen in ERs that see kids between the ages of 9 and 18 from the months since the pandemic started all through 2020 compared to 2019. So a 30% increase at ERs. So this is not surprising. Children and teens, for the most part, don't learn well looking at a computer on Zoom call for 7 hours a day. They just can't learn that way. Some kids can, but most cannot. They need to be with their peers and their teachers. This allows them to stay engaged. It allows them to ask questions, to have good dialogue, and to maintain a desire and an interest to learn. Kids have got to also be with their peers and teachers just to talk and have fun and laugh and joke and tell secrets and tell their worries and their fears and their joys. This cannot happen over Zoom. They've got to be able to go in person and get help when they need it. It's very hard to ask a question on a Zoom call or to email a teacher, and 24 hours later, maybe you get an answer when the assignment's already been due and now you're behind and the next class has started and you're really screwed. So they also really need the ability, there's those kids that there's a teacher that is their person and they maybe don't have a good home life. And if they can go in and sit with Mrs. Smith 2 or 3 days a week in her classroom at lunch, that might be their lifeline. They've got to be able to go to PE. For a lot of kids, that's all the exercise they get. They don't do sports. They don't live in a safe neighborhood. They live in an apartment. There's no place to exercise. They've got to have the chance to do their one elective that for a lot of kids is the reason they go to school. I have a lot of kids that they're like, the thing I love is theater. The reason I go to school is band. The reason I go to school is arts or wood shop or journalism. But I'll do all the other stuff, but I don't love it. But that's my carrot. That's why I go. That's my passion. You can't do ceramics. You can't do theater really very well remotely. And so if they can't do that, they don't have a carrot. They just check out. They're like, if I can't do my thing, I'm not doing the rest of it. And so I'm just gonna get C's and D's or maybe just not try. They've got to be with adults that in some cases might be the only person that gives them praise or love or affection. They also need to be seen by their teachers so they can be recognized if they have unusual bruising or cuts, or maybe they have super poor hygiene, or maybe they've lost weight. Teachers are the #1 reporter of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, as well as neglect. And without them being in person, that is not being reported. A lot of kids, at least in Johnson County, 15 to 20% of kids get 1 or 2 free meals a day at school. So it's going to be hard for those kids to get all the food they might need in some cases. And then the teenagers, they've got to go to school to be held accountable. I mean, so many teenagers that I talk to, they wake up, they check into their class at 7:45, they turn off their computer, they go back to sleep. They wake up 50 minutes later, they check in on Zoom, they turn off their computer, they go back to sleep. They do this all day, every day. If they're in hybrid, then they do it 2 days and then they go to school for 2 days. But these kids are sleeping all day long and they are not paying attention in class. They're not even attending class. So for all these reasons, we cannot allow hybrid or virtual to continue. Children and teens must be with their peers to develop normally in all aspects of their lives, mentally, emotionally, socially, civically, academically, and physically. I don't know how many of you have kids in school, but in case you don't have somebody that's doing hybrid or virtual, I'm just going to tell you kind of the bare bones of it. For virtual, you don't go to school at all. You have 7 to 8 hours a day of Zoom classes. Sometimes you've got a teacher that will actually lecture and teach you the whole time, and then you stay on there and do your work and you can ask questions. Oftentimes, they will get on there, they'll teach a little bit, and they'll say, okay, here's the assignment. Go ahead and log off and finish it. Many kids zone out, even if the teacher is lecturing, or they'll turn their computer off and go to sleep, or their camera off, or they'll just go do something else. A lot of kids with this virtual way of learning have just fallen so far behind that they've just given up and they don't even try anymore. They do log in usually, then they log off and they're like, I'm done till 50 minutes later and the next class comes on. And then the other problem is a lot of times there's technology glitches and you might totally lose a lecture, or it might be glitching so much you can't understand it. In the hybrid form, most schools, that means you go for 2 days in person, and that's good. You get to be taught then and ask questions and see your friends. When you're at home, though, in hybrid, a lot of districts, and both of my kids at least, and when they're in hybrid, they don't get any instruction on those 2 days. They log in so they can be counted as being there. The teacher says your assignment is listed on my website. See you later. They log off. They do the chemistry or physics or geometry or calculus all by themselves. They teach themselves. They are not going to have teaching on this subject, because 2 days later, when they actually are in class, they are onto a new assignment. So they are teaching themselves this material. So truthfully, I almost think hybrid is worse than virtual, but I don't argue for either of them. I think they're both a poor choice. Let's see. So in my office, just a few examples. I would say every other week, I probably have a kid that comes in that's been cutting with scissors or knives. They'll cut their arms, they'll cut their legs. They cut to transfer the mental anguish that they feel from anxiety, depression, isolation, fear, school failure, loneliness. They transfer that mental anguish to their arm or leg physically, and that takes away some of that horrible feeling that they have inside of them. That's why people cut. There's been some that I have seen that have been so severe, I've had to put stitches in them, and it's 24 hours later, and there's like 15 cuts, and I put stitches in 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Every single day, I see kids that have given up on their work. They've been A/B students in the past. They're now B, C, D, sometimes F students. They've fallen so far behind, they've given up in many cases. There's been a 50% increase in the number of kids with Fs in the Blue Valley School District this year. That is huge. Every single day, I see kids with severe anxiety. They cannot stop worrying. They are fearful. They are scared about their grades. They're scared they're going to lose their friends. They're scared about their future, their health. They can't fall asleep. They just lay there and worry for an hour, hour and a half. And then the depression I also see on a daily basis. Most of those kids, most of them are not suicidal, but the ones that are, they just say, whether I have a plan or not, I would never kill myself because I would not want to hurt my mom or my sister or my grandma. It would break their heart. But those ones that are suicidal, they're like, there's nothing for me to live for here. I don't care if I die. And I hear that. I probably hear that from people ages 9 to 20 at least once a week. I don't have to admit somebody for acute suicidality more than maybe once a month, but I hear this type of sadness on a regular basis. So Dr. Ackerman, like I said, is going to discuss the details of the data that overwhelmingly proves that kids and teachers can safely be in school. There is really no reason or excuse that they should not be there now in every district in Kansas. What we are doing now is not working. It is a poor product and it needs to stop now. My fear going forward is the goalpost for getting kids back in school has been a moving target. Initially, it was, okay, we'll have a few weeks out of school. Then it's like, no, okay, we're not going back to school the whole rest of the year. Okay, kids could deal with that. But then when we started to get this gating criteria, that now you can't go back until you meet these 5 criteria. And if you look at that, we aren't ever going to meet that. Like we might not even meet that by this fall. So that is an unreasonable expectation. And there were already studies showing that people were doing this in places that had our same transmission and doing it safely. So that was the goalpost. That's currently the goalpost. I'm afraid the new goalpost will be, okay, 50, 60, 70, 80% of the general population has to be vaccinated before we can go back. Then, teachers also, we got to get 50, 60, 70, 80% of them vaccinated. And then, wait, we got to get the students 50, 60, 70, 80%. The problem with that is, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there is a lot of the population that is not going to take this vaccine. I don't believe that. I've already had the vaccine. I believe in the vaccine. I think everybody should get the vaccine. But that is not what is going to be the reality of it. We are not going to have 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% herd immunity with uptake with this vaccine. It's not going to happen. And then, even if we did magically get that, I fear that the cries of, what if this new strain is more deadly? What if this new strain is not covered by the vaccine? What if? Where does it stop? It needs to stop now. These kids need to be in school. So I know the school boards have local control. I know they decide if kids go to school. That's why I've been there 7 times in the last 6 months. But if there is anything you guys can do from a legislative standpoint to get these kids back in school now, or to guarantee that they will be in school in the fall, I really, really beg you to do it. what we're doing right now, I mean, we've got to ensure that these kids have the best chance to learn and grow and develop, and in some cases, give them a chance to live. So that's all I wanted to say. If anybody has any questions, I got about 10 more minutes.
Well, thank you, Dr. White. We appreciate all the contributions that you've made to so many different boards and committees. We'll take one question, but we are a little bit behind on schedule, and we don't want to delay you to where you need to be, but it is an important topic. Is there anyone in our committee that would like to ask one question? Yes, Representative Owsley's got the one question.
Madam Chair, I have a number of questions.
What I'm going to ask you to do is, I have provided, or actually Roger's provided an email for every single individual, and if we need to have another discussion next week, not necessarily inviting our conferees back, but just in our group regarding their responses, we can do so.
Then I guess maybe let me get one question out while I have the one question.
Absolutely.
We're allowed to as a committee during a hearing to ask. Dr. White, you just said that you'd been at the school board meeting 7 times. I'm curious how many classrooms you've been in virtually or physically or otherwise during this pandemic.
So I am home Tuesday afternoons, and I am home all day Thursday. And one of my daughters pretty much does all of her Zoom calls on the couch in our kitchen. And so I sit there and do my stuff while she does her stuff. And so I have seen a lot of virtual Zoom calls. As far as physically being in the room, I have been approved to be a substitute teacher, but I haven't been called to go and teach. But I am willing to teach any Thursday that they need somebody in any school in Blue Valley. So
you've been in one virtual classroom.
So I have probably heard her talk with teachers in, I would say, 50 or 60 different class hours over this last semester. I have heard 50 or 60 of her classes.
But one student.
My one student, but I also see 25 patients a day. I hear their stories. I have been pretty active in the community, and so I do hear story after story from parents. I hear the stories of my daughter's friends. I don't think that their story is an isolated story. Also, it's happening across the country. It's not an isolated incident. This is what is happening to our kids that are in hybrid and virtual. There are the occasional teachers that will really do a good job of staying on the whole time for the virtual class. There's the very rare teacher that when you're in hybrid and you're not actually at school, they'll say, if you would like to stay on and listen, you can. But the vast majority say, okay, thank you for checking in. You can log off now.
Maybe when we have more time, we can share stories of other classrooms.
And thank you, Dr. White. We appreciate everything that you've shared. And I would just add that I've listened to school board meetings online, Olathe being one of them, and I've listened to probably not 100, but at least dozens and dozens of parents that share these stories. This topic is kind of like the Department of Labor for legislators, in that we get that many calls from parents that are begging for some help, parents that we have never heard from before. So I don't think your experience is isolated. I think that you can extrapolate what you, in your own life and in your own office and in the board meetings that you've gone to, and your friends and your neighbors. I think there are success stories out there, but if there were majority of success stories, I think we wouldn't need our school buildings. We could do everything remotely. And if that's what we're trying to advocate, then that's a whole different funding model entirely.
Right.
But Dr. White, we so appreciate it. It looks like you're going to have some emails that may come your way from this committee. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you. Now, committee, on some of our conferees, well, it's just an informational hearing. Some have specific times because of their responsibilities. And so for those, that's why we will cut more of the questions short, because we're trying to get to that person that has a specific time. if there is several, if we get through those and we're doing well, we don't have to limit it to one question. But in honoring the commitment to the next conferee, her name is Melanie Smarsh. She, if I said that correctly, we have visited on the telephone. She's from Mays School District and she's a parent. Melanie, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome. And
Thank
what
you.
we're doing is if you would like to share about 5 minutes, then we'll open up for questions after that so you can continue with what you're doing.
Sure. First of all, my experience is very similar to Dr. White, so it was a little bit refreshing to hear that I'm not alone in this fight. I'm speaking on behalf of the Mays Coalition for Change. This whole thing started with our district, obviously, in March of last year. I was actually out of the country when the schools closed and didn't realize the magnitude of COVID until we returned back. I'm a human resources manager for a manufacturing company here in Wichita, and we are considered an essential employer. And although we were a COVID positive cluster case for the county of Sedgwick County, we were not. We continued our employment the entire time. I've never missed work. Since the schools were closed, I didn't really pay attention at the end of the last year because, I mean, my kids were home remote. It's the last, 6 weeks of school. It's no big deal. We'll just get through it. This will pass by summer. We'll be back to normal. We made it through summer and we had a board meeting before Labor Day. Our first day of school got pushed to September 8th, I believe. And during that board meeting, it was a 3-hour meeting. I remember sitting there listening to the superintendent, Dr. Higgins, present options. And one of those was, we're going to put elementary K through 5 in 4 days a week, with Wednesdays being remote. And we're going to do 6 through 12 as hybrid. So 2 days in school and 3 days remote. The thought process was for Wednesdays to be the cleaning day and to provide what our assistant superintendent deemed as a dress rehearsal for when we go full remote. Wednesdays was going to be the dress rehearsal for full remote. And that stuck with me because I told my husband at the time, we're going full remote. This is what they're planning. They did not plan to put our kids in school full time at all. They have hedged all their bets on full remote. And so we made it through September, through October, through the first week of November, the board voted to put K through 5 back in full time and keep 6 through 12 hybrid. So K through 5 went 1 week full time. They went 1 week for 5 days. And then starting November 13th, everyone was full remote at that time. And they were full remote until January 1st. There were a group of parents and myself that got together and we created the Mays Coalition for Change. It's a group on Facebook, and we decided, what are we going to do? Our kids cannot stay full remote. A lot of us work, and so now we're asking jobs, which some of our board members suggested maybe we ask for a little leniency. How do we juggle working full time, managing our kids? They cannot make adult decisions at home, and that's what they were asking them to do. And so the December 14th board meeting came, and there were a bunch of us that signed up to talk. Of course, we have to do Zoom meetings. And I think we knocked them back on their heels. And the board was a little stunned that they had this many parents saying, this is not working, remote is not working, remote is not working. And so they voted that night to put K through 5 back in full time January 4th. 6 through 12 is still going to stay hybrid. During that December 4th or 14th meeting, we provided statistics and data to the board. One of them being our D and F list had increased by 30% just that semester. I figured out that a lot of the kids who are getting good grades are not getting good grades because they know what they're doing. They're getting good grades because they're cheating. That was very apparent when they would have hybrid days at home, and then they would go to class and take a test, and they would not do well on the test, but all their assignments were A's. So it's very apparent that they're getting through the semester cheating. So we put the kids back in January 4th. K through 5 has been full time ever since. We had another board meeting on January 25th, and it was a special board meeting, and they did vote to put 6 through 12 in at least 4 days a week beginning February 22nd. We have another board meeting on Monday, which did feel like that was a victory, but we are getting pushback from other parents in the community who do not feel that it's safe. And my argument with that is Derby was the most comparable district to Mays, and they put their kids K through 12 back in full time starting January 4th. And so when we say, well, Derby did it, then the argument is, well, we can't compare ourselves to Derby. And so we, again, feel like the goalposts keep getting moved. And then the conversation at the last board meeting was everyone needs vaccinated. Well, again, that's moving the goalposts. You know, we can't continue to move this. We are seeing a lot of pushback from the community regarding this decision that the board made. We feel like it's safe. Everyone can continue to work and go to work and provide for their families, but the hardest place to go in Sedgwick County, and specifically Mays, is to go to school. And the argument is, well, kids are resilient. They can. This is fine. They'll be fine. And my statement to that is, the senior doesn't get their year back. As much as you think it's trivial that they go to prom or that they have homecoming, that's a big deal for those kids, and they should get those social experiences. And the freshmen who may have borderline homeless situation, they may not have next year because they decide to drop out and go find a job because school wasn't open and they had no place to go. Or the 7th grader who's home by himself and isolated and commits suicide, and his mom has to come home to find that. Those kids don't get that next chance. And that's our argument. And we are very thankful that the board is considering other options. Sedgwick County case rates are diminishing and getting quite lower. And we're very hopeful by February 22nd that we're currently at 7%, that we would be at 5%, because they did indicate at 5% they would go back to full time. We did present the board with a binder. In that binder, and I'm going to give credit to Carrie Fellows. She's a mom here in our district. She presented this binder, which I emailed to all of you, and it's data and letters and 43 solutions to put our kids back in school full time. So we feel like we're doing everything we can, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I have a freshman in high school and a 5th grader. So I kind of get both aspects of this remote hybrid issue going on here.
All right, thank you, Marcia. If you hold on here, we'll see if there are any questions. I do want to make note to the committee that it may be mixed in the oral testimony, but there are letters and recommendations, the solutions and recommendations, where you said there are 43 different points that your group put together, studies and data. You guys spent a lot of time and energy to get your kids back in person. You must really believe in it, and appreciate
hundreds of hours.
Yes, I appreciate your testimony. So I want to turn it to the committee and see if there are any questions for Marcia.
No.
Yes, Representative Penn. Yep.
Ma'am, I don't have a question, more of a comment. Thank you for caring.
Oh.
You and all the other parents. Appreciate your example.
Well, thank you for saying that.
And if for those of you not familiar with the Sedgwick County area, Mays is in Sedgwick County. It pretty much blends right into West Wichita. And I just saw the newspaper today, the Wichita Eagle, where they are relaxing, the county is relaxing all kinds of COVID restrictions on restaurants and bars and other businesses. But at the same time, I see that you guys are still hybrid, still trying to manage and juggle everything. So hang in there, and the legislature is listening. To note from our last previous speaker, she also provided some studies, the pediatric study, the Duke study, and the New England Journal of Medicine. If that was not included and was just sent to me, I will be sure and get these studies to you so you can take a look at those. All right, thank you, Marcia. All right, committee, the next person is also remote. His name is Kemper Whitlow. He's a student at Gardner Edgerton. His mom is actually here. Is Kemper with us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Kemper, welcome to K-12. You have about 5
Thank you.
minutes.
All right. My name is Kemper Whitlow, and I'm a junior at Gardner Edgerton High School. So I haven't been in a classroom since March 12th of 2020. I remember when I was just excited about having an extended spring break. But anyways, so at some
Oh, wait, one second, Kemper, hold on. Kyle's gonna give you a tip.
Okay.
Kemper, if you would drop your video, I think it would probably help the bandwidth. Go ahead and just cut your video off, and there we go. See
Perfect.
if that
Okay.
helps.
Yeah, let's see if that helps better so we can get a full, clear testimony. Thank you.
All right. Is this better now?
Let's try. Go ahead.
Okay. So I roll out of bed at 7:58 to get on my class that starts at 8.
Amber.
What?
Your voice, they can't hear you. They can't hear you.
Are you sure?
We
Yeah,
can hear
sorry.
you. Keep
Oh,
going.
I can hear me, Dad. Sorry about that. So I'm pretty much in my room staring at a screen all day, and it doesn't feel very healthy for my eyes. I will miss instructions sometimes because my internet isn't very good, and running Zoom and other I'm lucky my parents provided for me in some access to monitor very easily during on a conference calls. It makes it very difficult to focus. I am normally a straight I was physically at school.
Kemper,
I still have
hold on a
all the
second.
classes.
Kemper. Okay, so first of all, I think we all get to feel the frustration of students when they're at home and maybe multiple kids or their Wi-Fi is not working. This is what our kids may be dealing with at any given moment. So first of all, it was frustrating for us just for this 1 minute. But I'm gonna tell you what, Kemper, I think that we can do this. I'm wondering if you could call your mom and we could put it on the microphone. Do you think that would work? Okay. You
Yeah,
want to do that, Kemper? Just log
yeah, I
off
can do that.
and just call your mom right now. And then she'll turn on her speaker. Andrew, you want to help Jennifer turn on her speaker? And then you can just talk and finish your testimony. We heard some of it.
You guys hear me all right? Okay, so I'll just start over. I roll out of bed at 7:58 to get on my class that starts at 8. I'm pretty much in my room staring at a screen all day, and it doesn't feel very healthy for my eyes. I will miss instructions sometimes because my internet isn't very good, and running Zoom and other applications at the same time doesn't work very well. I am lucky enough to have a monitor that my parents provided for me that I can plug into my Chromebook, but without the monitor, school would be very difficult, and I know some kids don't have access to one. I get distracted very easily during class. My phone, video games, food, etc. are all just right there. I've even built a Lego car during class. Another distraction would be the noise in my house. With my sister singing and my dad on his conference calls, it makes it very difficult to focus. I'm normally a straight A student, and I lack the motivation that I had when I was physically at school. I still have A's in all of my classes, but there's a lot of homework. After I get off school at 3, I go straight to work. Then I get home at 9 and do more schoolwork. I spend at least 9 hours a day looking at a screen. Some of my classes use the full 83 minutes of class, and it's tiring and easy to lose focus. I played football for my first time this year. I was able to go to practice and play in football games with other people, but I wasn't allowed to go to school. I would get off of school at 3 and then have to drive to football practice, which started at 3:30. My teachers are trying so hard to engage us, and they are working with what they were given, but all they get is a bunch of black screens with our names on them. I turn my camera on for some classes, but some students never show their face, and it could be because their camera is broken or something, but I'm not sure if that's always the case. I'm behind in all of my classes because we started so late. I'm in an automotive class and a welding class this year. I can't work on cars or learn how to weld. I'm losing the opportunity to learn things that I could use in my future career. I lost a lot of my education my sophomore year when it ended early, and then lost more when we started school late this year. I'm taking honors pre-calc for college credit, and we are extremely behind. It's not my teacher's fault that we started so late. He just wants us to have a good understanding of the materials so we can use it in our future math classes. Being alone in my room all day starts to get depressing. I am an introvert, but I miss the social interaction with people. I miss meeting my teachers, working with my friends on projects, and eating lunch with them, pep rallies, school dances, and watching football games on Friday nights. There isn't much to look forward to anymore, and I never thought I would miss going to school this much.
All right, thank you, Kemper. Are there questions for Kemper? Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kemper, did I hear you right and said that you have not been in the classroom at all since March?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So you played football, any other spring sports to get you out of the house?
I'm planning on playing tennis this spring, but
Nothing in the winter.
football.
Okay, well, good for you for going out for football, and hopefully you'll be back soon. I know that I think there's hybrid soon. Representative Wen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question. Where do you go to school, Kemper? And welcome, Mother. Where are you from?
We're from Gardner Edgerton.
Gardner Edgerton.
He's at Gardner
Okay.
Edgerton High School.
Thank you.
All right, well, Kimber, you did a great job providing testimony your first time, I take it?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you passed. Good job. Next is your mom. You'll have to watch and see.
I'm going to hang up on you, Kathy.
Okay, all right. And Jennifer, you are next. And since you are here, you can actually come if you want. You can come to the podium, or if you prefer, you can stay right there.
Whatever y'all want, it's fine.
Representative Estes is the closest, so she says she's fine. You can come up to the mic and just turn the button on. This is Jennifer Whitlow, as she stated, a parent from Gardner Edgerton. Welcome. And about 5 minutes with questions.
All right. Thank you all so much for letting me come and address you today. As she stated, my name is Jennifer Whitlow. We live in the Gardner Edgerton area, have been there 30 years. We have 4 children. 2 have already been through the Gardner School District, and we have an 11th grader that you just heard from, and then a daughter that is in 7th grade. I'm here today not as a proponent or an opponent of any bill, but I am here because I don't know what else to do. My children have not seen the inside of a classroom for 11 months, and we are pretty much at our wits' end in Gardner. Many of you, I know, have your own districts, so you might not be aware. Gardner is the only school in Johnson County that has not been back in a classroom for 6th to 12th grade since last March. This is not due to the lack of trying for parents. I'm part of an organization of a group of us that came together in efforts to try to get our kids back in school. called RISE, and there are over 800 parents on this, and we are all at our wits' end. All of the surrounding schools are in school: Wellsville, Baldwin, Paola. They have all gone to school all year, full-time. Some of the Johnson County schools, as you know from your charts, have been in and out. They have hybrid. At least they've met their teachers. My kids have not. We did get an email from our superintendent last Friday saying that they will be starting hybrid on February 9th for Kemper. But then we have parent-teacher conferences that Thursday, Friday, and they're off the next Monday. So they get to go to school a couple days that week. What Kemper School is going to look like, though, in some weeks is 2 days a week. It's a block schedule. That means he will attend a class once. He has a 5-credit-hour AP calculus class. He mentioned that they're behind. They were only up through chapter 2 at the end of the semester. When I called the principal concerned about this, I mean, this is from Johnson County Community College, we have their requirements. I said, what's going to happen? He said, the good news is he's going to earn 5 credit of college, but the bad news is he's not going to have the content. This is a prerequisite math class that is being built upon, and they're just going to gift it to him, but it's no gift when he gets through the ACT. So I know there are many here that are going to tell you what remote is like. I think you're going to hear that plenty today. I'm here to tell you that as a parent, as a mother, I have spent hours and hours and hours advocating to our school board. I have tried to go through the proper channels. I've spoken 3 times. I just spoke Monday night again. In the November board meeting, we had 57 people sign up to talk at our board meeting. Many of those were students. We were treated quite poorly. We were not allowed to come in to the district office except one by one. They would not give us a list of what order we were in. The superintendent sent out an email saying, we will text you 2 minutes before you beat at the door or you lose your spot. When I requested a list so we could kind of know what order we were going to be in, be prepared, they refused to give it to us. There was a little girl, she's 11 years old, one of the teacher's kids was going to speak. She needed to use the restroom after an hour and a half. The teacher knocked on her mom, the teacher knocked on the door, would not let her in to go to the restroom. They let the KMBC 9 News guy go to the restroom, but would not let her. That's unacceptable. They're asking for our help as substitutes. They're asking, we have tried to work with them and they will not. That same night, there were about 150 parents and students out there with signs peacefully saying, please let us go out of remote. The police came flying out of the building, said we had to move across the street. I said, sir, we called the police and asked if we could be, where we could be legally. They said, the sidewalk, what is the law? He said, I don't care what the law, I don't know what the law is, ma'am, but Pam, your superintendent, says she's shutting this down and you won't speak unless you move. So we did move because we did not want to lose our opportunity to speak. There were no street lights. They were not working. We said, this is not safe. We're up against a street. You've got to turn on these lights. They never came on. This is the way we as parents have been treated in this district. And I have sent multiple emails. I have had a few responses, but for the most part, nothing. I have one board member that is willing to talk with me on the phone, and I try to keep it very respectful. I'm not attacking them as people, but I don't know where else to go. So I'm coming to you today to say that my children are not being properly educated. I am not getting the education that I am paying for. If we could afford to put our kids in private, I'd do it in a heartbeat. We've lived in Gardner for 30 years. We are considering moving so my kids can go to school every day, for goodness sakes. My daughter said, Mommy, could you sign up to be a temporary sub, because I have an accounting degree, so that I could go to Wellsville? Would they let me in? This is ridiculous. We've got to fix this. And so I don't know what else to do. I do appreciate that you are willing to listen, because that's why I'm here today, because I have exhausted all resources within my local district, and I don't know what else to do. So if you could do anything to help us, I don't know if that means purse strings, whatever. We have to get our kids back in school. It can be done. I mean, our district has been unwilling to reevaluate. I've said, please look at a different gating criteria. They're only using 2 data points coming out of Johnson County. They're using percentage positive, and they're using incidence rate. The incidence rate is down to 366. In order to be green and go full-time, it has to be 50 or less. Hasn't been that since June 19th. So we're stuck. What do we do? I don't know. So I'm just asking you, and I really do appreciate your time today and being willing to listen, so.
Thank you, Jennifer. We have a couple people on remote, one at 4:30 right now, and then one at 4:45. So I'm going to ask the committee, are there questions for Jennifer? If so, if she's willing to hang around, we can bring her up for questions. Okay, so do you mind waiting?
No, not at all.
Okay,
I'll just hang out back here.
great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. All right, online, remote, we have, I'm going to skip to our 4:30. My conferees, and you all have the list, they have a list. They get an idea of when they're going to be called up. So the next is Joy Eakins. I hope I said that right. I'm not sure. She can correct me, and she's on remote. Welcome, Joy.
Hello, how are you today? I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I'm hoping you can all hear me. My name is Joy Eakins, and I own a company called Cornerstone Data in Wichita, Kansas. I also am a mother and a former school board member for Wichita Public Schools. Our company has been tracking COVID data and its impact on society since early of March 2020, and has spoken previously to the legislature about the impact of the pandemic on Kansans. And we've documented all kinds of studies that we've done frankly, out of my own pocket, just as a concerned citizen, to help people understand how to navigate the pandemic. We've done an extensive study of school gating criteria and guidelines in Kansas and nationally, and we've documented that on my company's website with videos and data studies. And recently I authored an article titled "Who's Missing in the School Gating Criteria Discussion" for a local online journal that was released in February, and I believe that's in your packet. The school gating criteria for Kansas was established as a recommendation by the Kansas Department of Education in August, but the SCG are fraught with issues, as I've documented in our testimony and online. A few things that I didn't include in the written testimony. But we studied the gating criteria for surrounding states like Oklahoma, Nebraska, Missouri, Arkansas, and South Dakota, and recognize that on all counts, we have the most restrictive gates of all states surrounding us. And here's an example related to what Ms. Whitlow just talked about. In the school gating criteria for county cumulative incident rates, the number of cases over 2 weeks in your county, the standard states that if there are more than 150 cases per 100,000 residents, then the county is red. In Kansas, half of the counties in Kansas will be red with 10 or fewer cases of the virus. So if maybe 2 families get sick in your county, or if you have a long-term care facility with a cluster of 10, you are now red, which would indicate that you should have school in person. And while the Kansas Department of Education made a slight modification to allow in-person elementary education in the red zone, none of the other well-documented issues were addressed. There are many more issues with the SGC, and I'm happy to talk about those further if you have questions, but the most glaring flaw is that it provides a picture of what's happening in the community at large, mainly to adults. But children aren't at high risk for hospitalization, and children 5 to 17 are 16 times less likely to die from COVID than the control group of 18 to 29-year-olds. To put that in perspective, if you're over 75, you have a 630 time more likely to die, where children are 16 times less likely. The CDC found there's little evidence schools have contributed meaningfully to increased community transmission. There's no data in the SGC that helps us know how children are doing when they're not physically present in school. But as this data begins to trickle out, the picture is dismal. For example, a study released in November by the Journal of American Medical Association states that in the American school shutdown in the spring, an estimated 13.8 million years of life will be lost by our elementary age students. That's just elementary age students in our country for spring. That doesn't include middle school, high school, increased dropouts, or fall. That's a major understatement of the actual impact. So when people talk about schools being out, this actually has an impact on years of life of students. Mental health is also an issue. An estimated 35% of teens who receive mental health care receive all of it, 100% of it, in a school-based setting. And now we're seeing that teens aged 12 to 17 saw a 31% increase in mental health related emergency department visits over the fall. In the South Central region, you know, we've talked a lot about having a mental health crisis, and this is certainly going to compound that when students are unable to get the care that they need through the schools. Studies are also showing that all positive impacts we've had in lowering childhood obesity and screen time are being lost. And I'll just speak personally, my son's a senior in Wichita, much like the student that just spoke. Since March 2020, he's been in a school building 4 days for instruction. And that's just because Wichita went to a hybrid program on January 25th. So here's his remote day at my office. He comes in for two 90-minute Zoom calls, a 40-minute lunch, followed by another 40-minute Zoom, a 90-minute Zoom, and a 45-minute Zoom. Each have about a 3 to 5 minute break. And this is all followed by hours of homework in front of the screen too. Now I run a tech company and I've been in Zoom meetings since 2 o'clock today and I'm exhausted. I really don't know how my son and his friends do it. It's exhausting for students and catastrophic for their physical health, and it also impacts their life expectancy. And worst of all, students who live in poverty are the least likely to have access to in-person school, technology, adequate internet, food, or adult supervision. So really, the people who need the most help in our country are getting the worst raw deal. As a former school board member, I would suggest that when boards meet, they include criteria to understand what's happening with their students. For example, we heard Mays talk about looking at the number of D's and F's in their schools or progress indicators. None of those are being shared in our school district. How about the number of dropouts this year? How about the number of new juniors and seniors in jeopardy of not graduating? Or looking at trends in login over time by building and grade level, or enrollment trends. And I'll tell you that enrollment trends that we've seen just between 2019 and 2020, between last school year and this school year, are not pretty. We're losing a lot of kids. And then we also have community indicators like what's happening crime-wise. We're seeing an increase in children committing crimes in Wichita, in drive-by shootings, in drug use, in requests for mental health assistance. And our board recently just mentioned that they've been aware that there's an increased number of suicide attempts. Why not put those on a dashboard and include them in gating criteria? The American Academy of Pediatrics advocates that all policy considerations for school COVID-19 plans should start with a goal of having students physically present in school. Of course, we need to mitigate risk to the adults in our schools and try to address the burnout of teachers. I mean, how good are schools if we don't have great teachers? But when people talk about this like it's an issue of inconvenience for parents who need childcare, that they're being dismissive of the problem. The next generation's years of life are actually at stake. What happens in classrooms has a major impact on the length of their life too, which is probably not a big surprise to many of our educators. And so I'm going to end there and just see if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Joy. We appreciate that testimony. Are there questions? Yes, Representative Estes.
Thank you, Joy, for being on here. Did I hear you say there was a 31% of mental health crisis increase in 259?
That number is in the country. It may be higher in this region because we have a high need for mental health care here, but that's nationwide. There's a 31% increase for 12 to 17 year olds, and by the way, for 5 to 11 year olds, it's 24%.
Thank you so much.
And committee, what we can do, this is probably mixed in with all of the oral testimony. And so this is the article, Who's Missing in the Discussion of School Gating Criteria. It has that information about the emergency rooms in it. It has the full testimony that was provided by Joy Akins today. And all of these articles that are they're current. we'll separate them out, and I'll ask Roger to send them to you. So thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you taking time out of your day. If I didn't miss any other questions, no? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Committee, we do have another individual that wants to, she's remote, and is Dr. Devin Verana on? Is she on? She's scheduled for 4:45. No? Okay. Okay, so we'll look for her and see if she is there at, no, I'm looking for Dr. Jill Ackerman. Roger, did she have a specific time, or is she just? Yes. Yes, did she have a specific time?
I would love to go now if you're ready for me. I would love to.
Okay, well, we're going to have you go. Okay,
wonderful.
But Dr. Jill Ackerman, I'm going to have you go ahead and go. I will, we will have to keep it somewhat brief. Dr. Devin Verana is supposed to be on at 4:45. Okay, so we're going to have you go, and then I think, is that Scott standing out there? Okay, thank you for being patient, if you don't mind. Okay, doctor, the floor is yours.
You bet. I'll try to keep it to about 4 minutes. I'm a family physician, and I'm a mom of 4 Blue Valley students. I'm from District 2, and I've obtained an emergency substitute license as well. And I've been speaking to our board members since October of 2020. I've gone to 6 of our meetings regarding to bring up-to-date research and evidence regarding the importance of in-person learning. So I thought I'd give you a few of those blurbs that I've been providing to our board. And some of this information is from articles that Dr. White provided you copies of. January 6, 2021, a letter published in the New England Journal of Medicine summarized data from 2 million children and teachers in Sweden, showing that while schools were open, the occupational risk to teachers was no different than none. And UNC followed nearly 100,000 students and staff. It was published in Pediatrics Journal. You have a copy of that. The conclusion, quote, our data support the concept that schools can stay open safely in communities with widespread community transmission. January 21st, 2021, Medical University of South Carolina, an infectious disease pediatrician found that only 1% of their 38,000 in-person students and staff tested positive for COVID-19 between September through December. Quote, it is so compelling that the schools are safe if you put all the mitigation strategies in place, unquote. Dr. Fauci, November 29th, and just again last week, admitted schools are not a major driver of community spread. Dr. Joe LeMaster is our public health officer for Johnson County, Kansas, and he said of the COVID-19 infection rate, quote, we don't believe this is predominantly being generated by the number of cases coming out of the schools. The schools are doing a good job to protect their students and their staff. November 19th, CDC director, quote, there is extensive data we have gathered over the past 2 to 3 months that confirm that K-12 schools can operate with face-to-face learning, and they can do it safely, and they can do it responsibly. January 5th, 2021, president of the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, said, quote, children absolutely need to return to in-school learning for their healthy development and well-being. Many studies published have shown that lockdowns have negatively impacted diet, sleep, physical activity, and obesity rates among children, and that there's been a dramatic increase in mental illness, substance abuse, and deaths of despair in our youth. Academic failure has been documented, including a decline in ACT results here in Kansas, and other reports across the country that remote learning is inadequate for our students. Data from Texas, New York, Virginia, Minnesota, etc. I was finding these studies online. As Joy mentioned earlier tonight, Journal of American Medical Association reported an estimated 13.8 million years of life lost may be associated with school closure. And a quote from that article, future decisions regarding school closure should consider the association between educational disruption and decreased expected lifespan and give greater weight to the potential outcomes of school closure on children's health. And you all have probably read January 15th, the CDC, quote, as of December 7th, 62% of U.S. K-12 school district offered either full or partial in-person learning. Despite this level of in-person learning, reports to CDC of outbreaks within K-12 schools have been limited. And as of December 6th, COVID-19 incidents among the general population in counties where K-12 schools offered in-person education was similar to counties offering only virtual education. Even several U.S. school districts with routine surveillance of school cases reported lower incidents among students than in the surrounding communities. And a recent study found no increase in COVID-19 hospitalization rates associated with in-person education. Today, per the CDC, quote, vaccination of teachers is not a prerequisite for safely reopening schools, unquote. So I presented similar facts and evidence to our Board of Education October 12th, November 9th, December 14th, January 11th, and I gave similar testimony at the Kansas State Board of Education meeting on November 10th and the Spring Hill Board of Education meeting January 25th. So I'm happy to provide copies of all of that testimony to you if you desire. So despite the preponderance of data on the harmful effects of school closure and the research on safely opening our schools, our Blue Valley Board of Education continues to make decisions based on the gating criteria that's nearly 6 months old and I would consider quite dated, and it perpetuates school lockdowns. My high schoolers are a freshman and sophomore. Jackson says, I'm Jackson. I'm a sophomore, straight A student, hardworking, and I'm in the gifted program. I think remote learning has halted my academic growth. I really haven't learned much. I've struggled with motivation and getting work done on time, and many missing assignments, unlike previous years when I was held accountable by my teachers. At home, I have trouble staying focused, especially during long Zooms. By the end of class, I have usually checked out. I feel as though I am not being prepared for my junior year, especially as junior year tends to be the hardest. I haven't developed good work habits this year that will help on a computer for 7 hours of the day. My freshman, I'm James. I'm a freshman at Blue Valley. Feel as though I haven't learned anything this year. I've struggled to stay on task and turn in assignments. It's hard to get work done when there's no teacher around to motivate you. God bless our teachers. I have a hard time speaking up in class, especially over Zoom. Everyone can hear you, and that makes me hesitant to speak up because I don't have any privacy with my teacher. I miss hanging out with my friends and meeting new people. It's hard to concentrate on the videos that some of the teachers use, and I struggle to learn by watching a video. I learn more when the teacher explains things. If you lose focus and miss an important point, then you get behind. So that just blurbs from my kids, but they love their teachers and wanted me to be sure to extend that. So please take time to view, there's brave students' testimonies at the Spring Hill Board. Pretty darn heartbreaking, poignant. They were limited to 3 minutes, so well worth your time. And I just appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ackerman. Are there questions from the committee? Dr. Ackerman, I have 2 questions for you. You mentioned Blue Valley gating. Did you say they have not changed or updated that?
So I don't have the specifics on that. I believe they may have changed a bit in October. So I don't want to falsely say any of that. But the idea of this gating criteria is dated. The idea created 6 or 7 months ago, and we have so much more data that we've obtained over the past 6 to 7 months. So I have trouble reconciling that we're still following a criteria that doesn't take into account what we know about the deficiencies of remote learning, what we know about the fact that schools have not been proven to be super spreaders, what we know about the fact that hospitalizations don't seem to rise in communities with in-person learning. So I feel like the idea of a gating criteria back in March, when we didn't have all of this valuable data and understanding of how children transmit this virus, I'm disappointed that we're still using that despite all of the new valuable data and expert opinions and advice to get our kids back in school.
Okay, and then the last question I had is in your testimony, which by the way should be in that big, large package. It does say that schools provide a structural environment that can support adherence to critical mitigation measures, which can lower the risk of COVID. So my question is, would you then say that the studies support the basic concept that students and teachers are safer or as safe in their schools as they might be in their communities?
With the proper mitigation measures, which I think, and especially Blue Valley, I think they've done a fantastic job. And specifically, my elementary students are back in person learning, have been for most of the year. So kudos to our administrators and staff that have put those mitigation measures in place. And I also referenced that CDC article where there was some indication that kids that were in person, actually, those communities had lower transmission. Now, you've got to look at the preponderance of data, the wealth of data. But I thought that was pretty telling that we've got some pretty good information that in a structured environment where the kiddos are essentially being forced to mask and hand wash and socially distance, it makes sense that you would see lower rates of COVID.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ackerman. We appreciate you sharing with the committee. We have shared your email with our committee members in case they have further questions for you. So good luck with everything, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Roger, we have one individual, Dr. Devin Verana, and she's not able to get her link to work. Can you resend that to her, please? And she's in? Oh, great. Dr. Devin Verana, I may have not pronounced your name correctly.
Got it.
All right, so you have the floor. Welcome.
First of all, thank you for being flexible. Just paused with patience and had somebody come in right when I was joining you. So I appreciate your time and flexibility so I can be here. My name is Dr. Devin Verana. I'm a mom, so I have 5 kids of my own. I've got twin 4-year-olds, twin 9-year-olds, and a 16-year-old. So we have, navigated and felt this whole experience in a variety of personal ways. We are community members in Goddard, and all of our kids were in public school there. And that's unfolded in its own ways. I'm also a chiropractor and acupuncturist with a specialty in prenatal and pediatrics. So over half of my practice is babies, kids, and families. Again, over the last year, kind of seen all sorts of things and navigated, how to support parents through this really challenging time. And when asked, what I thought or what some reflections of virtual learning, I'm sure there's lots of ways to answer that question. And I think in a state of emergency or in abrupt collision to life as we had known it, I think that with really good intentions that, we've made calls that we needed to and offered things to people that had to make decisions for safety reasons and to keep classroom setting feasible for teachers, for students, for families, for communities. As we exit the state of emergency, I think that action and leadership will hopefully evolve as well. And, so me personally, our twin 9-year-olds and my oldest were headed to state wrestling. I'll never forget state wrestling, gets canceled. Governor Kelly last March decides to send everybody home. And there's this abrupt, whoa, this is big. Things are shifting. And trying to tell a 9-year-old, why this sporting event is being canceled comes with, they can get through that hurdle. And I was thankful because my oldest son was a freshman and not a senior. So I'm watching all of these friends and patients, how do you, tell your child that they're going to miss out on some of these memory making things. And you started to watch the stress rise. And I think it goes without saying that we've narrowed discussions to a pretty one-lane topic, right? We want to look at how to keep cases down. We want to mitigate the risk of the COVID virus. But as the state of emergency does start to loosen, me as a parent, me as a practitioner, and hopefully all of us as a community, we can get the eagle view of the numbers and go, okay, it made sense to go radically virtual and to maybe do hybrid versions when cases were rising. But now we look at the case rates are manageable, the hospital rates are manageable, and now we're seeing this uptick of anxiety and depression. And I'm a chiropractor, my husband's a chiropractor, so our kids, I mean, are relatively healthy and vibrant. And I haven't seen as much of the mental health in my own home, but some of our very best friends, and right here in my office, actually this afternoon, I'm meeting with 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds saying, you know, my anxiety is through the roof. I'm just lonely. I just miss my friends. And you know, the goals in education are based in meeting cognitive needs, social and emotional needs, speech and language needs, fine motor and gross motor. It's not one lane anymore. And so where I think that we need to expand and take a look. I know I spoke with one of the board members from Mays earlier today, and they were looking at suicide risks and depression risks. I know you guys have probably already had this conversation on this particular meeting. There's online universities available, and I do hope that for the families that have higher risk needs, virtual is still an option, because some kids have benefited and some families still need it, and some teachers may have their own reasons for it. But I do also hope that we start to change the channel and change the conversation, because we've got the safety component. Now we need that sense of belonging and community and the loneliness through a screen. If we said, hey, should a 9-year-old, 10-year-old be on Minecraft or on Fortnite for 6 hours a day, the answer would overwhelmingly be absolutely not. Whether it's screen time risks or the blue light effects that we haven't even begun to fully understand how that's affecting brain development in children. And so leadership is going to have to start to move out of the box. It's going to have to get off of defense and move into offense and start to make game plannings that, you know, that meet the needs, you know, of the majority. And I think that even with the very best curriculum and with the most adaptive teacher, you can't replace the love and nurturing and connection of a good teacher for a child. And that's not even, you know, it's so hard to sum up in 5 minutes of, you know, the children that are in homes that aren't safe. And as a mother, as a father, you know, the guilt and shame is so high. And what I'm feeling on people right now is they're doing the best with the options they have, but kids aren't learning. They're not thriving, not like we know they can. And I call, as we all make tough choices, and as leadership, you know, sits and looks at numbers and papers and graphs, and here's a variety of testimony and heartstrings tugging you in multiple different directions, that we can zoom out and go, all right, wow, we learned a lot. Now, where do we go from here? And what's best for the kids? And invite your taxpayers, invite your parents, invite your children to come speak at these things, and ask them what it's felt like to sit on the other end of a computer for 5 hours. And you know, my own home in 3 different age ranges, to keep twin 4-year-olds occupied and not breaking something or breaking themselves, while keeping 9-year-olds engaged in 2 different teachers, and then a 16-year-old that has hormones out of this world and needs social contact. I mean, and I have options. I have a nanny, I have an assistant, but for the people that don't have help or don't have family, or for the single parents or the blended families, it's, you know, I hope we can still offer a virtual option for the ones that need it, but for those who are ready to get back after it, which is 99% of the people that I come in contact with on a daily basis, I hope it's go time soon. And I wouldn't trade you places for anything in the world, because I know and trust that your hearts are in the right place, or you wouldn't sign up to do the things you do. But when you analyze numbers, I hope the conversation starts to widen from from compliance and how do we play defense from COVID and how do we show up for our kids and prepare them for future. That's, again, I'm on the fly coming straight out of working on the babies and families in this practice. And I had one mom that I'll email. She couldn't be here today, but her son, I've been his chiropractor for 8 years, and he's deaf, he's blind, he's autistic. His name is Braden, and their family relies on school. And she wanted me to share videos of him in his chair when they had to strap him down and how he clawed her skin, because you can't virtually teach kids on IEPs like that. And when we shut down, we shut out. And that affects the whole family. And so her name is Lindsay, and I'd like to just end with a prayer and call to action as you all figure out where we go from here. And I'm grateful. That's what I've got for right now.
Dr. Verana, thank you for your very passionate testimony. We appreciate that. And your last story is just gut-wrenching. It's really hard for us to comprehend. For those of us in this room, outside this room, that have solid arrangements like yourself, or we're able to make it work, our kids are able to make it work, it still doesn't compare to what we know happens inside a school. And giving children an option and giving families an option is really, I feel like what you were trying to say. For those that need a long-term virtual solution, Kansas has a virtual program.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, so I want to really quick, I give the committee an opportunity to ask questions. Again, if you miss an opportunity or you think of it later, hopefully you'll be able to answer some emails if they come your way.
Yes, the only thing I didn't jump into as well is a couple of the schools, and I can share that by email as well, that have been in session the whole time and with very limited restrictions and permission of parents. I think that I would call for you to hear from some of them as well if you haven't. I know Life Prep here locally is who a lot of my practice members have switched to. And so they're leaving districts, they're leaving public schools and now they're flooding these other options. So I would call to touch base with some of those schools that have stayed in session and open, and in some cases they don't, even they allow families to come and use mask exemptions, or they maybe don't distance as much as other programs, and they've had no shutdowns and no outbreaks, and their teachers are healthy, and I know that people like that would be willing to share. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually, I have 4 kids too, and 2 are still at Augusta High School. They are full on. They are one of the largest 4As. So that's 700 to 800 students plus teachers that are fully in school and have been, except for a few weeks. They wrestle. My son's a wrestler, no issues, football player, cheerleader. So the biggest challenge is just getting around the quarantining of those that may have been close to. So I do appreciate your testimony. If there are no questions, we'll let you go, and please send us any of those contacts or testimonies that you might have, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, we have Jennifer Whitlow. We haven't asked questions. We have Scott that's next out in the hallway, and then we're going to just fly through. So Jennifer, come on up. I think Representative Tarwater had a question for you. Well, it depends on whether or not you're planning on staying or... Okay, well then that is very, very generous. Scott, I'm going to probably mess your name up too. Bosrath? Oh my goodness. Yeah, leave it to me. All right, so welcome. You are a parent from Shawnee Mission, and welcome to our committee, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I'd like to thank this chair and this committee for letting me talk today. I'm simply here to advocate for my 13-year-old daughter, a middle school student in the Shawnee Mission District. You know, it's so hard to put my thoughts together. To any legislator, any school board member, any administrator, and any PhD advocating for anything but opening the schools and starting activities, you are doing a disservice to our children. I feel like my child is being shorted more than GameStop stock. I mean, you know, it's a travesty. You know, I keep hearing follow the science and, you know, when COVID's over, well, clearly COVID's going nowhere. In the science, we've heard the science. We just heard several doctors talk about studies out of Duke and even from the CDC saying in-person school is at such a low risk of transmission and infection. And I'm failing to see why we can't open these schools. As a single father, I'm scared to death every day leaving my daughter alone, leaving her at home. It hurts me, it worries me. I mean, thank God she's got loving grandparents. Thank God I've got amazing parents that can show up and be there to at least keep an eye on her. You know, the Shawnee Mission District has been remote or out of school or hybrid for almost a year now. We've cut the 2019-2020 year short. We started the 2020-2021 year late. And since then, it's been hybrid, remote, back and forth. It's ridiculous. As a parent, I can't even keep up with it. And you know, I am happy that they can go to school at least 2 days a week. But those other 3, they're doing nothing. They're logging in the morning saying, hey, I'm a student, I logged in, thanks. I mean, they're given virtual assignments, and that's it. They're, other than that, on their own all day, by themselves, no teaching. You know, and they're missing out on so much. When they are in school, I feel like they're still not able to have that connection with other students. They're so disconnected, so regimented. I mean, keep our distance, keep our masks. I mean, how could you feel comfortable asking your teacher for help on a math problem when she's behind a shower curtain, when she's behind plexiglass? I mean, I can't imagine as a 13-year-old how I would feel going to a school and walking 6 feet from everyone. It's scary, you know? And I heard testimony earlier about some of the only things kids want in school, you know, they can't have. My daughter loves choir. That's hers. That was her motivation. The last half of last year and the first half of this year, virtually nothing. Now, yeah, they can sing a little in class. And I am thankful for that. But we're still not doing concerts. We're still not planning to show off what we're learning. We're doing nothing to serve our kids and give them that pride and what they look forward to. You know, I asked my daughter before I came here if she had anything she wanted to share. I told her she would have an opportunity to hear her voice, for her voice to be heard. And these were some of her concerns. To go to the bathroom, not only does she need a pass, but it's limited to 2 kids in the bathroom at a time. She's afraid to go to the bathroom. If she asks to go to the bathroom during class, she may have to wait behind 2 other students. I mean, she could miss that one class that she gets to go to for 20 minutes just to go to the bathroom. In the lunchroom, she said even the teachers complained because it sounded like a prison. They were marched in there in the order they went in and then separated by 6 feet. You can't go find your friend, sit next to your friend, and talk to the only person you know in your huge school. You're isolated, even at school, with people. You know, when it talks about choir, she said, you know, they're allowed 20 minutes of singing in choir. And even with that, they need 2 fans on the entire time and their masks on when they're not singing. It's a travesty. What is happening is causing so much fear, anxiety, depression, and self-worth issues. Hearing Dr. White talk today, boy, did she ever hit the nail on the head. She spoke what I can't. She spoke what I'm thinking and I cannot verbalize. She said my fears. She said what I'm seeing and what I'm worried I will see. She was right in every aspect. And I'm so thankful you got to hear her testimony, because I know I'm not the only person she spoke for. There's thousands of parents like us that are afraid to come out and talk, that are embarrassed to come out and talk, that don't know how to come out and talk. And she said what we're thinking, what we're feeling. You know, I don't know all that goes in to opening schools and what these districts and boards face, but I do know in the last year, while my child's not in school, my district passed a $250 million bond. The staff all got pay raises, and they hired a lot more people. What for? I mean, why? You know, firefighters, policemen, Amazon delivery people, Quick Trip employees, are they expected to go to work? Absolutely. Can they stay home out of fear? I mean, can they demand time off and more pay? Absolutely not. To all of you that have high school kids, they're out there bagging our groceries at Hy-Vee. They're making our Subway sandwiches. They're stocking the shelves at Target. And you know what? They're serving our teachers, our administrators, and us at Chili's as we take off our masks and ask for another Coke. That doesn't concern anyone, but it does concern them when our kids are in school. It makes no sense to me. I'm so happy we're having this hearing and you guys can hear our voice, because the standard that's set for schools is different than reality, is different than what is going on in the real world. And I appreciate you all hearing me out and letting me talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate your testimony. It's pretty tough. Are there any questions from committee members? Yes, Representative Thomas.
First of all, my high school kid works at Good Sense, so I was a little offended by your Subway reference. But man, I get it. I've got a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, and guess what? My wife works during the day, so I'm right there with you. You know, you talk about your kid in choir, my kid's in choir. You talk about, you know, being at home during the day with them. That's what I do. So I mean, I'm right there with you, and I wish I lived in your school district. You know, I had a lot of parents from the school district that I represent reach out to me and say, look, we don't want to speak up. We're afraid of backlash. We're afraid of, you know, the folks that the teachers pay the dues to. They don't want them speaking up, and so they called me. And I went and spoke on their behalf, and it was amazing to see the resilience of these kids, at least 100 of them out there with signs, peacefully just telling these people, we want back in, and to watch, it wasn't just one student, it was several students, tell their stories, tell how it's affected them, and watch how they explain their suffering, and watch the parents sit there in tears. It had an impact on me. It's not one student, it's not one story. There were dozens, and so I can relate to you on so many levels when it comes to when you talk about your children and their ages and their hobbies, because I go through that every day. So I hear you, and I appreciate you.
I'm happy others can experience that as well. I mean, then you can share that story, and it's good to not feel alone, much like our kids are right now.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for coming up here today, man, and having the courage to talk. I mean, you mentioned Dr. White. I mean, she's very well spoken, and she has your testimony was every bit as powerful as hers. You need to know that, because she has the facts and she can speak. But you had the courage and the passion to come up here and do that for your daughter and speak for her. I do have a couple of questions. I live in Johnson County also. You know, I was lucky enough to be able to have my kids go to private schools. They all started on August 15th, and they have been meeting every day since with zero issues. I mean zero issues. There might have been one or two cases that had to be quarantined, but they don't send the whole class home. They don't send the teachers home. They're careful. Did you look at moving your daughter to a private school at all? Did you?
You know, I've looked at the bill, HB 2119. Unfortunately for me, right now, I wouldn't be able to move to a private school. I am where I am, and I have to make the best of it. But if that was an option, I would look hard. I would look very hard.
Thanks, that's all I got.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to keep moving on. We have another father here, David Brucker. Would you like to come on up? Yep, sure. And real quick before you get started, we have the kids next, Ian and Ethan Reimer. You're going to be next, so you can slip in here and kind of listen if you'd like. I think there's room right there. All right. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much for having this hearing. I appreciate your time. I'm here to share my perspective. You have my testimony in your packet. It was very important for me to do this in person versus remote to kind of show that things can be done in person and, to maybe recognize the room of how we have different ideas, and we have some in masks, some without masks, some doubled masked. Those are choices that people are expressing that our kids do not have. They have no choice. I too, like many, we were all here for the all-in to do what we could do to lower the curve and slow the spread of an unknown deadly virus. As we acted and directed by our school district, it became more evident the unknown for both the virus and the actions to take. We all know the story and where we are today. I'm not interested to rehash everything. I'm here to share my experience and my family's experience. Like coming here, our family went to local board meetings. My daughter, who is here, she was able to attend because no one missed her in her hybrid class, so she could just leave. So we could drive over here from Johnson County. My daughter spoke in front of the local board, expressing her concerns of losing her band season. She's the drum major this year. She'll be the senior drum major next year, but missed out on an entire season. That's what she worked for, to be a drum major. She spoke of her and her classmates' acceptance to compliance with masking and social distancing. They had no band season, but we had a football season. That doesn't make any sense. Her and others' testimony fell on deaf ears with no explanation, while distant and maybe hybrid learning continued. The largest issue I have with all that's gone on is the lack of transparency to us parents and students for a plan, a future, and goals. The target continuously changing. We've heard that over and over again. As the testing parameters for red, green, purple, whatever status varied. I am the product of the Olathe School District. My wife's product of the Olathe School District. My daughter's in Blue Valley. I have a bachelor's of science degree. I like to believe I have a good understanding of science, and science seems to be the fallback word with discussions that come about. I know that in science we collect data, we heard about that, and we react accordingly. The initial data of this virus concluded as deadly and contagious, which is what we started out with. This is not the same results we see today. It's not nearly as deadly, and we have learned of treatments, and we've learned more on prevention. So we are not where we are today, where we were in March, but we are still in the same place as far as education goes. Why? We have not changed our reactions to the learned data over time. We're still in the same learning modes with zero explanation from our local boards. Elementary has been in person. Why haven't upper levels? Again, zero explanation. We've heard rumors as to why and things like that, but no one's ever stood up and said, this is what we're doing and why. That's not leadership. It's easy to lead in the good times, and it's very difficult to lead in the hard times. And our local board has presented no leaders. Emails and inquiries by parents get only carbon copy answers that provide no substance. We've seen many families opt for private education options over the past year, and how can private schools operate but not public? We hear rumors but no facts. No one will stand up and tell the public what is happening. This is unacceptable. I live in and pay for the Blue Valley School District. I moved to the Blue Valley School District to get education beyond expectation. That's their tagline. Today I only get silence beyond belief. This is unacceptable. Our daughter is an only child. She utilizes the in-person experiences to grow socially and mentally. She has had this revoked for almost a year. If learning by television was a viable option, why would we not have introduced it prior to this year? Because it's not. We've seen just the example here of the troubles just in 5-minute presentations. Imagine sitting through that for 80 minutes and another 80 minutes and another 80 minutes. I couldn't do it. We can see all across the country a return to both classrooms and activities, and the time is here. The excuses are tiresome, and we owe our children of Kansas better. I ask, as a parent tired of fighting for the basics of civilization, that we do everything within your power to get our children back in a classroom. Full time. What we are doing now is unacceptable. Another couple of things I was kind of just seeing about is that we're at a crossroads. The state cannot continue to just take money and not use it for as it's supposed to be used. We have buildings unoccupied, we have staff payroll without performance, and we have resource after resource just sitting for almost a year. As a business owner for almost 2 decades, I understand employment challenges. You don't let employment challenges break your business. You meet the challenge and you solve the problems. That's what leadership does. Quick example of what happened today. I mentioned that my daughter's here today for being able to leave at 2 o'clock and nobody cares. No text, no, hey, we missed you. Today, she had an 8:30 Zoom class that was supposed to be scheduled. She received an email at 8 a.m. that said, here's the assignment. Then no explanation in the email that there was not going to be a Zoom at 8:30. Showed up for an 8:30 Zoom that didn't exist. So at what point as a student do you say, well, I need to walk away? This is not a one-time thing. This has been happening the entire time. I have a very flexible schedule. My wife has a very flexible schedule. Like asking Dr. White about the same thing. These classes are occurring in very common spaces of our homes. We see them day in, day out. This does not work. I get asked for, what are we going to do? What's going to happen? We're not doing anything logical. I can't pass a logic test with anything that's happening. Logic allows you to click binary 1010 and come with an outcome. We have judgments that are happening here. And no person should be judging whether these students are allowed to have an education. That should be a born right in America, and it's not. With that, I will stand on the testimony of everyone else that's presented and reiterate everything that they've said. And again, I thank you for having the hearing, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, David, for your testimony. Committee questions for David? I think you just silenced us. All right, thank you very much. Moving to the next, we have Ian and Ethan Reimer. If you'd like to come on, and you guys can stand together and you just click on the little button right there, and Representative Estes can help you if you don't. There you go, you got it. All right, welcome.
We are here to advocate for the in-person learning. Thank you for allowing us to share our remote experience. We are a little nervous, so we will have our notes. I'm Ian Reimer in 8th grade.
I'm Ethan Reimer. I'm in 6th grade. We have been remote since we left school for spring break last March. We get to go back to school in hybrid next week. That is 334 days since we left school. With hybrid, we will still be home 3 days a week.
In November, we spoke before our Board of Education to share the negative impacts of remote learning. We felt that it is important they heard our voice. We experienced great disappointment when they chose to continue forward with remote. We will share many of the same thoughts we shared that night today, as our situation has remained unchanged. Our parents leave home around 7:30, and from then and until at least 4:30, we are on our own, managing our entire education independently. We're not adults, but adult responsibility is expected from us. We even eat lunch alone. Our mom was able to take leave in December to support us, which helped.
Our teachers are great. They are really trying. but this format builds isolation and limits socialization. I miss my friends. I miss in-person interactions with a teacher and the fun learning experiences that come with in-person learning. I am trying to learn the cello through Zoom, which is very difficult. By the end of the day, my eyes and legs hurt from so much screen time and very little movement. I have speech services. This year, I waited multiple times for a teacher to let me into sessions. I had a lot of anxiety and stress, wondering what was happening. We later found out the teacher was no longer with the district, but no one thought to notify me or my family. I'm 11 years old. Shouldn't I be set up for success instead of forgotten?
Remote learning is completely isolating. I'm a very hands-on learner, and remote does not meet my needs. Understanding information is more challenging because the remote format does not allow for experiences that lead to in-depth learning. You can't get the same quality from pictures and videos. I've begun to feel a complete loss of motivation in regards to school, and I used to love it.
Schools say they do not discriminate, but from our experience this year, they do. My brother and sister have been in school this whole time, and I have been in my house.
High school students were able to play sports, but in order not to isolate 17% of the middle schoolers, our district chose to isolate and exclude all of us from the same activities that high school students were able to access.
Fifth grade was allowed to enter our middle school because they are considered elementary. But according to the state of Kansas, sixth grade is also elementary, and I have remained forced remote.
We've had technology issues and struggled during remote, but academically our grades are fine. We know that this is not the case with everyone. And while we have experienced some mental health issues, we know that there are students struggling far worse than us with anxiety, depression, and thoughts of suicide.
We deserve more. All students in this format deserve more.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ian and Ethan. We appreciate it. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, guys. You guys, kudos to you for coming up here. I mean, the story breaks my heart. I mean, I played the viola. I played an orchestra for years. Don't ever give that up, man. That's so cool. I ended up sitting first chair my senior year at the 8th Youth Symphony because I never gave up on it. Don't ever give up, man. So, appreciate you guys coming. These are the future leaders of our state right here, folks. These guys right here. I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Yeah, we love it. Representative Johnson.
Hey, mask down, catch. I got to see your smile. Come on, down. Tell him one fact you learned in this building today about Kansas history. Quickly, walk over and tell him. Him. Smiling guy with the bald head. Tell him. Now, little one, I love that smile. What's one thing you learned here in this building today? Quickly. I can't accept that. I am Mr. J. Okay, I'm going to take that. That's a good one. That's what I miss about teaching. That's how you teach kids. We don't get to do that anymore. Okay. Thank you. You can go back and be quiet.
Hold on, we've got another person. But Representative Johnson, I used to be a middle school teacher, and I agree. You gotta have fun and joy, and I would have loved to have had a teacher like you, and I did have some teachers like you. So that just made my day to hear you act like a teacher in the middle of our hearing. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ian, Ethan, you guys, you rocked it. If we could break decorum and give you a hand clap for 1 second with leave of the chair. Yes. I want to let you guys know that you are not victims, you are victors. And the way that you comported yourselves and held yourselves in here and testified today on behalf of all of our students in Kansas, we owe you a debt of gratitude. Keep working hard, keep striving. We're going to take care of this.
All right, thank you, boys. We appreciate it. All right, so we're going to keep moving on. We're almost there. We have Dr. Janet Eaton. She's the superintendent of Catholic schools. She is remote. Are you still there, Janet? She might not be. She might.
I'm
Okay.
here.
All right. Welcome, and we apologize for the link.
Oh, it's okay. Great to be here with you, and I wish I was there in person. But it is great to join you. I know that you have my testimony, my story. I am the superintendent here in the Diocese of Wichita. But I'll give you a little perspective. We have 38 schools, and that is not in Wichita. So just by the area of a map of Kansas, we are from McPherson on the north to Kingman on the west. We go down to the Oklahoma border and clear out to the Missouri border. So our 38 schools have 9,000 students, about 800 teachers. We have been in school since August, full-time for the most part. And just, I wanted to just share with you the story of what I've seen from that is a resilience, and resilience has come as in all shapes and forms. But you think of a teacher, and I know it's been so hard for our teachers, but to be a teacher with a mask on all day and to be a student with a mask on all day, we've managed that. And we are so happy to be in schools. I was in a school this morning, and I hear that over and over. We're just glad to be here, whatever it takes. And we know that learning is happening. So if I could just highlight two points of pride for us, would be certainly the determination that we have had to be in school. And I think that goes with then the other point of pride would be the technology that I have seen our educators, and I know some of you are educators in the room there, but it would have taken years to get where we're at, and we had to do it overnight. We have teachers using tools and being relevant in ways that they have not been relevant ever before and would not probably have dreamt of doing. So I think successfully we're using programs and devices that we, again, are just so proud of. It's been breathtaking to realize and to see what's happening in our schools. If I could turn back time, I would turn back to August, and I would have our two largest high schools, Bishop Carroll Catholic High School and Cape and Mount Carmel Catholic High School, both here in the city of Wichita. They've been in a hybrid setup, and I would turn back the time and we would all be in. I just really value what I've heard today, and it's certainly fuel for my soul to keep moving on that. Our largest challenge right now with that hybrid even setup is the quarantining. And I'm hoping that our county here will move to what we've seen in other counties. But overall, again, just so proud to be leading our schools and seeing them so successfully learn in all shapes and sizes and forms. So I appreciate what you're doing. I would stand for any question that you have. Thank you for being such great leaders in this great state.
Thank you, Dr. Eaton. First of all, your smile is beautiful, so you must be very happy with everything you're doing. And then you're superintendent of all 38 schools or just the Wichita schools?
All 38 of them. So
one superintendent for 9,000 kids? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. It can be done. Any questions for Dr. Eaton? All right. And actually, I should have said it's just a joyful smile. You can tell when someone loves what they're doing and they're passionate and they believe in it. They have this joyfulness that just beams out, and you certainly have that. So I think then we thank you so much for being here. Please stay in touch.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. We have only two more on our agenda today. Trish Heilman, she's in the hallway. Oh, there she is. She slipped in. And sorry, she's actually from Wichita area. Come on up. And then, of course, we made Dave Traubert wait until last, so sorry about that.
It's green, so does that mean you can hear me? I'm loud? It's green. I feel like I'm loud. Yeah, okay. Hi, my name is Trish Heilman. I am a mom of 5 kids, 4 of which are public school age, USD 259. And thank you to the K-12 budget. Thank you, Chair Williams and members, for having us speak. I have 2 key takeaways that I would just beg you to remember for my testimony, and I'm going to hit you with them right up front. One is not every public school parent is able to advocate effectively for their children. And I say this as a parent who has been trained by our district because I have 2 special needs kids, so I have been trained to advocate. But a lot of parents are real covered up, and they don't have the time, ability, knowledge, or even the ability to put themselves out there to advocate for their kids. So when you're hearing all this screaming from your parents, imagine all the parents who haven't said anything to you because they're afraid. Also, in that same vein, Wichita Public Schools has not allowed public comment in their board meetings since March, with one exception. Their budget meeting is by law required to have public comment. That is the only time that we have had the public in our school board meetings since March. We can email our board, and they say, we have received emails, we'll put them in the minutes. They don't even read the emails they receive in public. So we have had no opportunity to go and speak to our school board as parents, as advocates, to tell these kind of heart-wrenching stories about our kids. So that is sort of key. Number two takeaway, education is done best in relationships and in person, period. But there are three groups of students that non-in-person education, it's exacerbated. Special needs kids, McKinney-Vento kids, homeless students, and kids in the foster care system. When they're working remote, are they in a van on a laptop as a McKinney-Vento kid? Maybe. A foster kid, are they being shuffled from place to place and trying to manage their laptop? Maybe. I've been advocating to our board to please pull these kids in person, regardless of their age, from summer, and we've just not had that. Other states' legislatures have mandated that. So that's a thought. Like I said, I have 4 children in public schools. 2 are juniors at the high school. They have special needs, so I have advocated for them to go in person. So I'm not going to talk about them because that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about remote. I have 2 kids in middle school. They don't have IEPs. Joseph is an 8th grader. You might have seen him out there. And my 6th grader, Adeline. And she is also out there. We're doing a little homeschool adventure. So my 8th grader is active, boy, loves school. Last year, A's, B's, getting it done, really proud of himself. This year, not turning stuff in, starting to get really angry, short with his siblings, really not the caring boy that we saw. We were seeing personality change. And because I've been an advocate and we were advocating, we were talking even to the news media to say to parents, watch out for depression in your kids, and here's what it can look like. Ooh, we were seeing it. And so I said, dude, I'm not letting this happen to you, and we pulled him home at the quarter. So our daughter is that go-getter kiddo. She's in a pre-IB program in Wichita at Robinson, and she was laughing and chatting. That's not what we were hearing from Joe. We heard him talk 4 times a day. Here, 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 here. That's the only time he'd talk on his computers. Adeline was chatting and laughing, and you could hear her engaging with their teachers. And I have to say, both Joe and Addie's teachers, amazing. It's not because the teachers weren't getting it done as they could in remote. This is just an inappropriate way for kids to learn. So she was turning everything in, but she'd come to me just sobbing, oh, I fell asleep, and now I have no idea where we are, so stressed out. Anytime, she just tied to the silly computer for 6 hours and then homework to the same silly computer. She's stuck. She's like roving all through our house on her laptop just to get a different environment going. But it might be that she's in noisy stuff. So she came saying, please homeschool me too. No worries, okay, done. So now I'm homeschooling my 2 kids. And I can, because I'm a stay-at-home mom with an education degree, not that you need that in Kansas, but we have that privilege. How many kids don't? Homeschooling also changed something for us in that I was going to be a substitute teacher. Hey, our schools need subs. Okay, I'll do it. Certified teacher, got the emergency sub license. I'm sitting on the computer doing remote school with junior high kids for 4 days, and I saw such shockingly different homeschool environments. There are some kids that have a guest bedroom all set up as a school place, and it's awesome, and it's so, wow. And there are some kids who are like laying in bed with their laptops. There's some kids who are sitting at a kitchen table with 3 other kids, and you can hear all this crazy ruckus. There are some kids, you see them, their microphones are all muted because otherwise it's bedlam, and you can see them. And then when you have them do attendance, They are having a jam party in the background. How do they even hear what's going on the computer? There's the environments that the kids are in while they're learning remotely are so varied and different. It's not appropriate. It's not fair. They don't choose this. They don't, well, okay, some of them could get out of bed. But for the most part, these are kids who are stuck in their environment where they are. And that's not a fair public school experience. So, that's pretty much the main things I wanted to get through to you guys and have you hear from us. Love to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Trish. We appreciate your testimony. Questions from the committee? Oh, Representative Penn.
Oh, so sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned that there are other states or localities that had these students come into schools.
Yeah, my mother-in-law is a teacher in Arizona, and so the Arizona Legislature insisted that kids with special needs, foster McKinney-Vento kids, and kids with IEPs would be offered in-person learning from the jump, from the get-go.
Yes, ma'am. And the nature of my question is, what type of stipulations did they have to bring those kids into the environment, the school environment, the safety precautions or anything? If you have
I
that.
think they required masks. I don't know all, I could ask my mother-in-law.
If you can find that out, if you could give it to the chairwoman, I'd appreciate that.
Because I think masks are smart, right? I mean, I agree with that. So, but it's a matter of that in-person piece is so critical for our kids' appropriate learning and mental health, physical health.
Okay, thank you, Trish. We appreciate it. Okay, so Dave, hold on one second. We have one question for Jennifer for sure. It's from Representative Tarwater. So let's do that question. I want to, and then Dave is going to speak, and then I want to talk to the whole committee about next steps. All right, question, Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't quite remember
Maybe you
what I was
didn't.
maybe my question wasn't going to be that great, but
I'm sorry, put him on the spot.
I did, Kemper, I don't know if he's still listening or not, but just wanted to let him know that, you know, not to give up, because he reminds me a lot of me in high school. I was a big automotive guy too, and he's right. You can't learn how to work on a car by watching somebody else work on a car. You got to work on a car. And there's a huge career right now in automotive tech and in welding both, and so I hope he holds on to that. We need people like him in this world, and he'll be highly successful just being an automotive tech.
I appreciate that. The sad thing is Gardner just built a beautiful ATC building with all of this equipment, and he was so excited to be, he was in there last year. This year he signed up. He's so excited to be on track, and then he wants to do it next year, and they have lost all this time of that in person. He actually was TA for automotive, which was just an extra study hall, so that I let him do it because he was supposed to take AP physics, and we didn't think that was going to work with the lab. So he opted to do that his senior year, and I let him do the TA so that he could have some extra time and not be on that computer 10 to 11 hours a day.
Well, that's something he's interested in. Johnson County Community College has an incredible automotive tech, and it's very inexpensive.
Thank you so much.
But my question, I think, was, you're involved in, how many people are in your group of parents?
There are over 800 right now. I'm not a Facebook person. I actually got an account with my husband in order to help, with this. There were about 7 of us. We call ourselves the Mama Bears that were like, what can we do? And we helped organize the town hall meeting, trying to engage our board. And there are a lot of parents on that RISE group that we just don't know what to do, pretty much.
I think I was at that meeting. I think Mr. Travert was too. But which one of you, out of the 800, how many of you are going to run for the school board? That's my question. We've got school boards all over Johnson County that are not listening to parents, and they are going to get blown out.
Yeah,
all over the place.
There's constant talk on that. Well, we even said, what can we do now? Can we revoke one or many of our board members? We do have 2 that are listening to us, and I am so appreciative to those women, but they're facing an uphill battle. We have 4 up for election this year, And there is a lot of talk like, who's running, who's running, but I don't know if anyone is committed.
I can tell you that from some of these other groups that I've talked to around Shawnee Mission, Blue Valley, Gardner, get good quality people. The students are there for you. They're going to be your best advocates. Go knock on every door and blow these people out. That's how you change this. That's the one thing you can do. At local elections matter. Get rallied, pick good candidates, not a lot of them, just a few, and go blow them out. We'll do what we're going to do, but you've got to send a message, and that's how you do it.
We're trying. The problem is it's not till November, and there's a lot of damage being done. A lot, and they've pretty much written off this school year, and it doesn't have to be.
Okay, we have one more question. Nope, okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. And Dave, come on up.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Dave Tribert, CEO, Kansas Policy Institute. I'll try to keep this very brief. I want to start by thanking the committee for having this hearing and making it possible for so many great parents and kids to tell you their stories. I want to thank them for doing it. I wish you hadn't made me wait and let them go first, because I can't beat that. And I also want to thank the school boards around Kansas that have actually allowed on-site, in-person learning for, according to the Department of Education, so far through the school year. Many more have allowed it than have not, which also is another indication it can be done if school boards want to. It's so critical that we get kids back in school as quickly as possible, not just for the emotional issues, but for a different kind of academic educational issue. Unfortunately, student achievement was not good in Kansas before this pandemic hit and before schools were closed. In fact, the last 2019 state assessment result showed we have more 10th graders in Kansas below grade level in math than are on track for college and career. 41% below grade level, 25% on track. And that number and a few other districts are in my testimony. We now have evidence it's gotten worse. The 2020 ACT test came out, and we found that Kansas went from 27% of the kids taking the test being considered college ready in English, reading, math, and science to 23%. That's a test that was taken last spring. I can't imagine what the ACT or the state assessments will show they're taken this year. I have, with my testimony here, we've had, I can't tell you how many parents and some students have reached out to Kansas Policy Institute over the last year because they know we're doing something. We're trying to help kids back in school through our litigation center, the policy shop, and everything else. My testimony is basically 27 pages of direct quotes. The first section is from parents. We took this off of school board meeting videos, so you can see who they are because they identified themselves. The second section is from people who wrote to us and said they were afraid of retaliation, whether against the parents, against the students. Please tell my story, but you cannot use my name. And so I won't read those. I'll just say one. And this is from a parent who wished to remain anonymous. I was told by the associate principal at Shawnee Mission School District that my son wasn't, quote, on their radar because he only had 3 Fs. Disappointment is an understatement. We feel helpless and neglected. Anything that you can do and anything we can do to help you get these kids back in school, and once they're back in school, do something to hold schools accountable for the unfortunate achievement we have, we're all in. Thank you for doing this.
All right, Representative Hoffman has a question for you. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I was going to ask Jennifer, but I'll go ahead and ask you. So she brought up, or I think it was maybe her son that brought it up, as far as he was taking a class. So he's getting dual credit, I get, or he's taking the Johnson County Community College class. Pre-algebra, is that what you said, or pre-calc? Pre-calc. When he gets there, wherever he's going to go to take his calculus class, that they're going to want to automatically put him in because he's already had pre-calc. I hate to say this, but I can almost guarantee you he is not going to understand calculus. And I know that from experience because I was a whiz in high school in math. Loved it. Got a KSU scholarship in math and science. They looked at my transcript. You're ready for calculus. I wasn't ready for calculus. It wasn't the teacher's fault. It wasn't anybody's fault. It just the way it was. This situation for sure, he is not going to be ready. And so, I mean, what are we going to do in those situations? He's got the credit hour. What's the college going to do in those situations?
Well, unfortunately, the college, as they have done for years in the past, will have to spend a lot of money on remedial training, whether it's in community college or the university. This has been, I mean, what you're hearing today, the frustration with remote learning, certainly is a new phenomenon. The frustration that with the achievement is not new. I'll tell you one quick story. I'm on the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee, and we were talking about education issues in the legislative meeting not too long ago. And I was encouraging them to do something about the situation. And so I read the numbers, some of the numbers I said here, and I concluded by saying, based on these state assessment results, we know that all across Kansas and right here in Johnson County, that we're giving kids diplomas knowing some of them are below grade level. Now, here's the funny part about that, or the sad part, I guess. The superintendents of Shawnee Mission and Olathe were sitting in that room and didn't say a peep. They had no objection. They had no rebuttal. We know we're letting kids out of high school with some of them below grade level. And yes, even in Johnson County, because in Johnson County, 30% of the 10th graders are below grade level in math. Well, they were in 2019. Who knows what it is now?
Representative Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello. For the newer members, and I guess those listening, you and I probably never agree on anything, right? Little.
I think there might have been one or two.
One or two. But the point is that you're the first person in this long train of people who have acknowledged that these problems systemically underachieving students have been here a long time, and no one other than you have acknowledged that. So that's probably the second time we'll agree, but that the challenge I have is that, and what you're saying, and what I don't know if the members of this committee have room to consider, that the COVID pulled the scab off of systemic problems that were there. And so when we, and this is my snarkiness, when we express our bleeding hearts, let's remember that on the one hand, I didn't hear those bleeding hearts before, but let's make sure that we look at the systemic issues. So twice. I'll look for the third time.
Thank you, Representative.
Okay, thank you.
It is, it's something we've been talking about for a long time. The good news is there is hope. We completed a documentary called Giving Kids a Fighting Chance. It's a short 35-minute film that explains from the Florida perspective, from Governor Bush, from superintendents, from the head of the Miami Urban League, what they did to go from almost the worst in the nation to the best in the nation for fourth grade low-income kids in reading. Almost worst to first. They did it with a combination of choice, transparency, and accountability, and the courage to implement those three main planks. The results showed, and it's not just the low-income kids, all the kids have shown dramatic improvement. It can be done.
Thank you, Dave. And Representative Nguyen, it looks like you might have a new partner to work on some things.
No.
Okay.
We will remain optimistic that we will discuss it fully as a systemic issue.
Certainly.
We'd be happy to have those conversations. And I would say, though your point is correct, when we had this remote learning testimony, informal testimony to the parents, to the doctors that shared their testimony, they were asked to speak on anything other than what is your experience, and some came from a medical background and some came from a personal background. So I think they did an outstanding job. They didn't hit all the points, but I didn't really give them enough time to hit all the points. But your point is duly noted, and the conversation does need to continue. So Dave, thank you very much. I'm going to conclude this meeting with a few important announcements for the committee and for those that are still on the remote, if they are still there. First of all, thank you for your patience, because I think it's a very critical issue. No matter where you stand on this issue, it's still an important issue, and we have to talk about it. All right? So that's number one. Number two, for if Craig's still there, or Brad's there, or Dr. Randy Watson, if you're there, we wanted to have a virtual roundtable discussion. I'd like to move that with you and this committee to talk about what are our next steps? What do we think? What are our solutions? We saw Melanie presented solutions with her team to Mays, and there were 43, a list of 43 action items. Let's just have that discussion. And I'm looking at next Tuesday for that. So Dr. Watson and Craig and Brad, if there's a state board member that would like to join you, I don't know if Jim's on or not. He is, Jim. Thank you, Jim, for being there. Would love to have you as part of that discussion. Even if only 10% of our students were failing more than they were before because of this situation, we would still need to address it. So whether or not there's a percentage of it that love it, they get to take vacation, whatever, even though no one's really traveling right now, it doesn't negate the need to address the issue and make sure henceforth, going forward, we take care of this particular topic, wherever it may lead. Because Representative Nguyen shared, she's got long-term, some other longer, deeper matters that she'd probably want to discuss. So let's make sure we have those discussions. And no one in this room that gave testimony was endorsing any actions that we will do or are planning to do or want to do. Okay, because we all have different positions. In terms of tomorrow, I want to say that tomorrow will be a busy day. We have two budgets we have to address. We are going to be working 2068. So prepare for that. And that is the tax credit bill. Then in addition to that is the COVID money. We're talking about $550 million. And we don't know how that number can go up from here. Those are just the first few rounds, first four, I believe. So we are going to talk about it. You need to know how your district is doing, what they're spending their money on. It's not that we're going to be able to go over all that. It's going to be a light touch so that when we can have a bigger conversation later on that topic too. Committee, you've been absolutely awesome. Thanks to all of our conferees. And rather than take questions, just send them to me or ask me afterwards. We are adjourned. Thank you.